Hey, how's it going, everybody? My name is Isaac, and today we're going to go over the condensation fling test that I did using Houdini 17.5's new condensation shelf tool that is built on top of pop fluids. So I'm going to go and open up Houdini. Cool. So here we are. Everything is loaded, right? And I'm just going to show you kind of first what I was thinking when I opened it. I mean, I thought, based off the name of condensation, that it would kind of generate just like little droplets on top of any surface. I didn't really look into it. The pop fluids made me think, oh, maybe it's like dynamic and they have a little like directional thing they can follow down. So these are kind of the steps that I went through when I opened it up at first. So I grabbed a tube because I felt like this was a great kind of, most of my things I was doing were bottles or cans, is 90% of what I'm putting condensation on. So that's kind of, it was just quick geo that I had in Houdini. So I put it to mesh because I'm from cinema. I like this to be 36 because that's what cinema does. And it just, 12 is a little low. Put this to 1. Put this, something 3.5. Just copy that in here and divide it so it's on the ground no matter what we do. Actually, 0.3 second, great, cool. So we have this beautiful tube, and maybe we can poly level. Cool. Then I'm just gonna add some normals to this guy, just as precaution. Okay, cool. So we have our base geometry. And from there, I just kind of went in to the particle fluids. And next to these is now condensation. Creates a particle simulation to mimic condensation on geometry. Sounds wonderful. So actually I'm going to deselect this, and this is just going to pop us with, select a surface for condensation. And I'm like, this sounds great. And I select it, and I press enter, and it thinks, and I'm like, wow, this is great. This is so much easier than any sort of setup I would do before. This is a lot cleaner. And this is kind of the mess L to, pseudo arrange that. Just gonna rearrange this a little bit. This goes over here. Yeah, so that's not at all what I want. So it just generated a bunch of stuff for us, and let's kind of dig through what's happening here. So this is what we modeled, right? Typical. I'm gonna add a transform and a null, and I'm just gonna call this actually, and a color while we're at it, color. And this is just to kind of differentiate between the can and the condensation that will be white on top of it, so we can see a little bit better. This is just going to be can out, because you have to do it in all capitals because that's what every tutorial shows, and I guess it's best practice. I don't know. It's just what everyone does. And this is going to be the rotator guy. So I'm going to stick that in there, and from here we're just gonna, later on we're gonna just rotate this, and so that means that we actually have to then take this guy, this null, and re-plug it back in, because you want nulls, at the end of an object that you're feeding into a bunch of things, because you don't want to have to, like, if you get rid of that normals or something, and you don't have to re-plug this all back in. So that's why you put a null at the end. It kind of is like a catch all, and then it feeds into everything else. So you could really quickly just kind of do a sphere, plug it in, do anything else, instead of having to kind of plug it into this normals, which doesn't make sense, or the poly extrude or bevel that doesn't make sense to be there. So you kind of just do all your modifications, and at the end you just plop down a null and you're good to go. It doesn't actually do anything other than help organize your file. When someone else opens it, they respect you and they think you're a great Houdini artist. And that's what Houdini just on its own does. And I think it says out, so I think that's why we do this out. It looks unified, it looks clean. Cool, so we're viewing up here, so we're actually gonna bring it down here. You get that color node. Okay, so a lot of things you're gonna change in here. So the look sort of how big all your particles are gonna be is a sort of a weird balancing act between this scatter, which is the droplet points, which I'll show once I start the sim, and this one, which is a source point. So you can kind of think of it as this is a bunch, and this is a little bit, and these little bits are what kind of start falling down when you do the sim. So this is kind of what it feeds from. I think, I haven't read the documentation very much, and that's kind of just what it looked like when I was looking at it, and that's kind of how I treated it, and it seemed to work. So I'm not saying that's what's happening, that's just what I think is happening from the little test that I did. So that's all set up. Cool. So we're going to go over to this guy really quick. This is just, your standard stuff in here. I'm going to go into volume meshing and subtracting this mesh that you're putting condensation on, and sort of cutting it out so that it's not a full sphere, because if by chance you're using a bottle or something that's glass, you can't have this big sphere that's intersecting, which is what this mesher will, this condensation tool will do. You're going to want a VDB intersect or subtract so that it actually looks like it's you have to have a little bit for things like Octane, or else they get artifacts. You have to have a little bit of intersection, and then it treats it as though it's on the surface, and it looks better and it's more realistic, because when a droplet's on a surface, it's not a sphere. It has a flat back to it, and that's how you get realistic caustics coming off of things. And it's a big pitfall that people do, even if we're doing this like metal can. It's a pitfall that people do, and they don't put the back sides as a flat surface, and it you can tell. And so this is just going to help us automatically do it, because it's all volumes, and volumes are amazing. And the biggest thing for the mesh in here is this limit refinement iterations. So I don't know why this isn't checked on. Big shout out to Tokyo Megaplex, Chris. I had a bunch of flickering in my meshes, and essentially this is like just the like one-click solution to fix it. It was lifesaver. It's for small scale. Definitely don't do this if you're going to do an ocean simmer stuff, but like for this viscous things, little droplets, paint splatters to a degree, click that on, and it will save you a ton of headaches and trying to bring your particle separation weight down to like compensate it and everything. That's what you're looking for, that thing. Don't do anything with it. I mean, you can if you know what you're doing, but if you really just want to kind of combat flickering, just click it on, and then we're going to do some VDB afterwards once we get the particles and condensation looking the way we do. Cool. So, actually, I'm going to drop down a color node in here. Actually, a null to say droplets out, and color node just so we make sure they're white. Cool. So with everything set up, we can go finally in the brains of the operation. So, this is your typical pop source fluid. This is a custom one they wrote with a little bit, geared towards that weird sort of tensile, strength in here for like small scale stuff, and stiffness constraints that they kind of just geared exactly towards the setup. And I'm sure they're really smart, and they are smart, and I'm sure they built this, exactly how we need it for this condensation. It holds up. It does what you need. So some of the things in here, just off the bat, your particle separation need to go way down. Stiffness I cranked way up, and tensile strength I brought down a little bit. And I think those are the only things I really messed with in here. I mean, it's not that different from what the base is. So I'm just gonna let this go. I'm gonna change my scene actually. Where did that go? It's over here now. Just a 60. Because that's kind of what my sim was at, and that got, you could see enough of what was happening. And I'm just gonna let this go. And you can see, I mean, it's pretty fast, and you can see kind of what it wants to do. The blobs are obviously way too big. Gonna click on some real time. And yeah, so what this is wanting to do is A, make massive, way bigger than they should be droplets, and B, it's wanting to kind of just make ones that drip down. This is where I was like, oh man, that's not at all what I was wanting from this. I'm thinking more condensation as, these little static droplets, and maybe one goes through and sort of, collects the other ones. That's what I was sort of hoping for. But this setup, it can do it, I'm sure. I haven't done that yet. But basically what we're going to do is get them to grow in a pattern that looks sort of similar to how condensation would, not like art directing it or anything or using any noise fields to kind of determine how big or small it is. It's all just how it grows natively with the particle fluid. And then going to spin the can so that these little droplets fling off, and there's little tiny ones and there's big ones, and when they collide, they join into each other. And that's kind of what this is going to be. So this is a great setup just on its own. It looks good. It bubbles up and it pulls down. They separate and it looks great. And there's all this stuff going on down there. So that reminds me, we're going to add a floor just off the bat. So we're going to, instead of a ground plate, I'm just going to make a box. So you can make a ground plane just in collisions, choose a ground plane. But because I don't trust those, I'm going to make a box or a cube, whatever your preference is. I'm going to make this a polygon mesh. I'm going to crank this to ungodly high numbers, 10, 10. And we're going to bring the size down. Probably put that to 2 because you don't need any more. And I'm also going to copy this parameter, paste relative references, and divide by 2. And that's no, we want to multiply by 2. Oh. Delete channel. Negative 0.1. Negative. Okay, that's what we want. Yeah, so you want to paste relative references, and so that's going to be, just 0.1 by default, which is going up off the ground, which we don't want. So we want half of that, and in the front we want it to be the negative version of that. And now it is on your floor, no matter how big you make it. Cool. Go procedural. Great. So now we have a floor, and I'm actually going to make it 4 by 4. Yeah, that looks good. Just so we can get this collision happening even when it flings really far out. Then we're going to go null, and we're going to say floor out, because we are diligent and organized. Cool. So now we have our floor, we have our pseudo can. Great. Everything's looking awesome. And then we're just going to select this and say static object. I'm going to go inside, make sure it did what we want. And it did. Yeah, over here, box. We're just going to call that floor. And call this can. Great. So some gotchas with this that I ran into. For the can, because we are going to be spinning it, just use deforming geometry. It's pretty self-explanatory. And then in the collisions, we're going to turn that off. We're going to turn this on. And just double check this. I mean, by default, it should be pretty good. Might crank this down a little bit just so we get closer to actual shape, because this is something that's, you know, pretty important with collisions. If you're doing things that are going to be on a surface that are going to be for metal, I mean, it's not going to be that noticeable. But if this was glass, you're going to really want to up that so that it's a true representation of your mesh. And then we're going to do the same, and this is why I do, I mean, I don't know if this is right, but this is why I do this for ground planes, is because I've been screwed over too many times by actually we're also gonna hide those. Yeah, okay, so that looks right. I've been screwed over too many times by it not reading the ground plane with meshes like this with fluids and kind of slipping through it. So I really just wanted to reinforce it by putting a little depth in this box, and that should be good. That looks right. So we're going to turn that off, and we're also going to we're just going to double check. We're really not going to even leave it up to the solver. We're just going to put it to volume collisions. Cool. And so those should be all set. That's all you ever have to do with those guys for this setup. Just leave them over there. Forget about them. The other things in here that you're going to be messing with are the adhesion force. So that's essentially what I understand of it so far is it's saying, hey, keep all the droplets on the surface. Don't let them, you know, just like slide off and go all over the place. Keep them, if they start sliding, go down and then go under and then drip off. It's kind of just trying to do that, and it's cranked up pretty high with a 6 times multiplier on this distance, and so this is actually one of the key parts that I was like, come on, get off the can when I was spinning it. And it's just it's you know, it's keyframes, so it's not, you know, ideal, but for this little setup it works. So I just animate these down, and it's essentially letting them fly off. I do it pretty quick that from the static ones that are on to flying off, you don't really notice. And in the same vein as that, gravity, this was the other thing. Right now it's at half the normal amount of gravity, which is, you know, typical for, you go small scale and you go with things that are kind of moving on surfaces, and you kind of bring this down. You don't go real to life, which is, I think, negative 9.5. You'll be able to bring it, it looks close to half here, but this is sort of like an art directable thing. It essentially, if it looks right and it's moving right, it's whatever number works in your scene. You don't have to follow this. So I start with a really, really low number just to get them kind of drooping a little bit and sagging down, making that oval shape in my test that I did. And then when I start flinging them everywhere, I just crank this up to real world, which is, you know, negative 9. So it's a pretty dramatic amount of gravity that's being introduced into the scene, along with this adhesion force, and the two of those kind of let it fall off and down. And that's kind of the look that you're getting, and it pretty much makes sure that nobody's kind of left on. But even in these tops, because there's a lip on the can model that I used, everything stays inside because there's downward gravity, and it doesn't kind of like start to look like water in space and float off because I'm introducing a lot more of realistic gravity. So those kind of settle in a realistic way once you're done using it for, setting up your condensation. Cool. So those are pretty much in here all the main settings that I had to tweak with. So to get them being less massive, we're going to turn this back on so you can sort of see them. To get this being less huge, one of the big things was going to turn this down to something like 2.002. And that seems crazy and that seems super dramatic, and it is, but you need that. If you want a ton of little tiny droplets everywhere, they're going to need to have such little space between them to form and fill them with little tiny particles. So that's why you got to bring that weight down based on what they have. I'm sure I could scale the scene up to meet that, but most of the tests I've been doing, I've been bringing in things and bringing them down to this sort of scale for small scale, so it made sense to bring this down. Sort of, another art directable thing. You could match this, just keep scaling your object up until this looks right. That might even, might be better. I don't know. This is just kind of what I was doing. I'm not saying these are the right ways. I'm just saying this is, if you want what I did, this is what I did. The next thing, stiffness. I can't tell you that this exactly really affected how it looked, but I wanted it to be a little stiffer, stop, moving, and, keep to themselves a little bit more than being as blobby and, liquidy as the default was. So I just cranked that up. And then the next one was Tensile Strength. And there's a lot of really good videos that even before 17.5, this was something that people were looking into and was already a part of Pop Fluids. And there's a bunch of really smart people that kind of go over this. And I messed with the values, just up and down, and the lower the better is what I got. I didn't mess with viscosity. I put it up, I put it down. Both looked really bad. Both kind of didn't look as liquidy. So I mean, obviously, the guys at Side Effects and the girls at Side Effects, they messed with this and they found that one was probably good. So might as well stick with their decision. And then yeah, so here and here are going to be the things that you animate, along with we're going to actually go up here. Can floor be organized? Yeah, so the next thing, the main guy that's going to drive how you animate those other two parameters is when you're rotating and how fast you're rotating. And this is actually driven by, the meat of it, which is these guys. So this droplets and this add emission frame and fade emission, these guys are sort of your turn on, turn off. And right now, if you look at this is just going to the end of a frame. This is just emitting all the time. It's saying, hey, I'm just going to take from here. I think this is what I observed and I think is happening. It's just say, hey, I'm going to take from these particles and I'm just going to keep spitting out based off how many are here and how many, over there. I'm just going to spit out a few to go down and just keep emitting and emitting. So when you watch it over, it's just saying right now, so we have that higher, particle separation, so it's a lot slower now. And these are way more detailed blobs that we're getting. So I'm actually going to go back while we, look dev with this and change that back up to a little higher number so we're not wasting time. Let's see if this works. Reset to default is there. Interesting. That was not the number they had, was it? Who knows? Let's see if this is just crazy far apart. And it is. Okay. So that is obviously way too high, and you're just kind of shooting these particles out into space. Let's try to put that down. What if we just go 01. Is that closer? No, that looks wrong as well. 04? Is that what I recall? That looks, you know, kind of there. I'm going to bring this back down. Those were things that I messed with at the last second. Let's see if we can get back to our beginning. 04 seems to be wrong. 14? I could, you know, just pause and look. That looks sort of like what we were getting. Interesting. I'm actually gonna open up my other scene. So this is, if you download that HIP file, this is the HIP file that you're gonna get. This can is the can I used, and we're gonna get into that, but I'm just trying to, you know, if you don't want to do this, just kind of go over the basics. And let's just double check. So I add my notes in here. When did I put this at? 0.004. I raised it. That's why it's being weird. Always gotta remember. Yeah, so I dropped it here. I actually raised it. The zeros got me confused. I raised it up, so the tensile strength was higher in my scene. Put this at 1,000 and put this guy at. We're gonna put him back at 1, so he's, you know, going a lot faster. He's 10 times less detailed and cool. Awesome. So we get some blobbies, and then it starts emitting again, and you get this little guy that kind of trails down and breaks off. Great. And you get that huge thing. So that's kind of like, you can see the scale. Like if that was shrunk way down, that would be right. That'd be the size and shape that you would want your droplet to start looking at. Oh, look at that. Yeah, it's intersecting. Amazing. We will cut that out with the VDB meshing at the very end. So yeah, essentially I was like, okay, cool. That is, with these settings, that is the size and shape that I want, just like scaled way down in a bunch of them. How do I do that? So obviously put that down to, you know, a way lower number, and you're going to have way less separation, and that's going to allow to, once you, you know, set up these other settings, to add a bunch of them. So this guy is saying, you know, just keep making it. And so you can see this whole time, it just keeps, you know, randomly pops up here, 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 the whole time it's doing it. It doesn't, you know, make one and then stop. It's just always going. And that's kind of how I read it. So I deleted this channel that was just, you know, the $sign end, and I put this to 5, which surprisingly, and I'm not quite sure why, it essentially said, hey, all those things I was going to do over 60 frames, do within 5 frames. It wasn't a kind of a turn off right away. It was kind of like, I guess the best way of saying it is like crunch everything you were doing in 60 frames all the way in 5 frames. So it really actually sped up. So it allowed, instead of like 1, 2, 3, 4, you, within the frame of 5, you kind of just got 1, 2, 3, 4, and it was like right there immediately. So you can kind of see in that play blast that I have. Let's actually go there to my Twitter and take a look at this. Nope, none of those things. Yeah. Let's kick out to Vimeo. So you can kind of see it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, and you already have them generated. So by here, this is around the 5th frame, it had generated all of them. Whereas before, I was fighting with it, and it was like, I didn't realize that that setting was doing it over the course of, I mean, 60 is because that's what I reset this scene to, and why it said 60, but it was originally at 240, so it had a long time to start plopping these guys out. And so I was like, this is just not, it would be like one small dot there, one small dot there, and I was like, I need this to be, you know, way more, and also stop, because the issue is, even if you crank up these point amounts so that it's doing a bunch within 1 frame, the problem is that once you start spinning, it's still emitting. It's not like this geo is there and then it all flings off. It's emitting, and because every time it emits, it's thinking of, okay, I'm static, and then it updates, and then the next frame it's over, rotate a little bit. you get these like streaks that start happening, which I guess could be cool if that's what you want, but it's not what I wanted. I kind of wanted to have this system grow a bunch and then stop and then let me deform them by rotating the object and flinging them everywhere. So I needed within 5 frames it to make all the particles, little condensation droplets I needed, stop doing that, and then let me deform them and dynamically move them around with gravity and stuff. So that's one of the big things was add emission frame. Put it down to 5. I didn't mess with any. I did mess with this actually. Set add. Let me double check my file here. I don't think I think I left it back at its defaults. Yeah, I put it to set. I was doing some stuff with add and it just wasn't looking right, but I feel free to mess with these. It definitely does change the look of it. I messed with a bunch of these and obviously their default was right. Cool. So now we're going to go down into the fade. And I didn't, this is normally how it looks. So you get these ramps and you get fade out frames, 10 frames, fade in frames, 2, and don't hold on any frames is the default. And how I interpreted this is that this is going to be where you can sort of determine how big a blob can get. Like it starts making a blob within 2 frames is kind of how I read this. And then it has 10, it won't, keep on it for any frames, and then it will slowly stop emitting in that spot over 10 frames. So that's 12 frames. That's half, based on being 24 frames a second, that's half a second that's spent making one droplet. And that felt like a long time to me. And it was obviously making these huge chunks, and I need little tiny droplets. So I cranked this guy down to 2. And then I was like, fade in, fade out ramp. Might as well, crank these tighter. So anything I can do to really get them small and emitting and then stopping. I originally was trying to do this with a hold frame and these guys way lower, and the holding was too long. They grew too big and they started connecting into each other and making this like web looking thing, which is, cool if you want to make like an ice growth, I guess. You can mess with that. A lot of the look actually comes out of these guys, surprisingly, because these are really driving how your emission turns on and off, along with how long it's going to emit here. So those are big key players in the look development of this. This guy, his conditions, this is another thing, very, very important. They have it default to here, and that looks good for what they originally intended for it to be doing, which is kind of growing a thing and having it streak down. But for having more of like these little tiny condensation droplets, like in the example here, I found that I was getting too much of a webbing pattern or a figure 8 where you kind of get 2 balls next to each other and they make that like unnatural like pairing of each other with each other. And so actually switching it to this Wyville, maybe some guy's last name model, whoever he is, thank you, because it's great. It really is like a quick solve for that. There's a bunch of the, if you ever use X particles, like Heart and all these ones. But there's a lot of options here, but Wyville model seemed to be the best for me. And we can kind of go down. Look what I did here. Yeah, Wyville model, and then everything else is the same. Everything else is pretty much default. Why is that? Why do those guys? Okay. Except for this. Cranked this way up. So this is sort of helping in the shaping of the droplets distance threshold. I kind of just came to that number based on going up and down, up and down. I'm trying to manage different things out with this, and that's kind of the best number that I found. And now into where I spent the most of my time, which was these guys. Um, so I went way off book for this. They put 10, which makes sense. They have very few amount of places that their little, I mean, their huge droplets can, emit from. And down here was actually where I found I could get really cool patterning going on by abusing and misusing the relaxed iterations. So here and here, they're kind of low, and I actually inverted them to get this uh, amount and this small big ratio. I kind of flipped that on its head. Oh, I'm actually gonna. I don't know why this is not set to dark. Perfect. Save as default. Yes. I just installed 17.5 on this machine, so that's why. Cool. And I'm gonna get that floor turned off. Great. Almost seamless between the two. Yeah. So in this scatter, you can see it's way, way higher than what they were having. It's 20,000. They had it at 10. So this is 20,000 opportunities for a droplet to be made within 5 frames. So, a lot of droplets are going to be made. And then in here, it's lower. And I don't know why, and I can't explain what's happening exactly. I just know that this being higher and this being lower gets you a lot of condensation on your bottle. This being higher and this being lower gets you a lot of little streaks, and not a good representation. These numbers also directly affect the size. So it's a balancing act between these and your particle separation and these guys of how long they emit, which will grow a particle, or not a particle, but grow a grouping of particles. So these guys all play a role in balancing out settings to get what you want. And there's no fast way that I found to do it. It's just kind of trial and error. The nice thing is the sim, it doesn't take minutes and minutes to bake a frame. You can do it really quickly. I got to this in 6 hours of noodling around, and I don't even know Houdini that well. I just, buttons and buttons and pushing buttons. And then the other interesting thing, actually, let's look at this. So this is, you can kind of see this is like a good non-uniform grouping of how you would kind of think condensation would grow out of, and that's just by really messing with these. So the scale by radius is cut in half to what it's usually doing, and the relaxed iterations are double what they're doing, and that's the same on this one as well. They're using the same thing. Whereas if we jump back here, by default, what you're looking at is 10 and 1, and if we preview this, that's the particles that you're looking at for that one, and that's the particles you're looking at for this one. It's just not at all enough for what you need, because this is determining how many they make, and if you only got 10, you only got 10. So we're going to crank this back up to 20,000, and you get a bunch. And you can kind of see this is how the relaxing looks, and it's nice. It's not a grid. It's uniform. It's not uniform. It's well spaced out. They're not clumping up in any areas, but the problem is we want them to clump up. We want to sort of have some cracks where there's no droplets because maybe a trail went down. So we're going to bring this up to 20, and it's like, wow, great, you smoothed it more, but not. If you cut that in half, now you get these nice little, it almost looks like frosting, like ice frosting. Not icing or frosting on a cake, frosting on like glass or something. That's a confusing English situation. So then we're going to go to this one and do the same thing. So we need not even that much more. We just need, I think, I was sitting at around 25,000. That's not correct. What was I sitting at? This guy. Yeah, interesting. It's definitely sitting at 25,000. I wonder why that is not behaving the same way. Maybe I should look into that. Let's bring this back. We're going to go 20.5. Interesting. I wonder if this is going to directly affect it. I wonder if this is based off my model. So if we go back up here, I wonder if there's height segments. Yep, there are. Cool. Gonna add 12. Now what's 18 of those? Yeah. And let's see if that directly affects it. No, interesting. I cannot tell you why that is being different. So let's look. We have max 1,000 points. No, max 1,000,000 points. Global seed 0. We're doing it by density. And look here, we have by density 25,000 max. A randomized point order. Interesting. Forced total count, and this is being done on max points. Let's go back to here. This is being done on density scale. And this is being done by forced total count. I don't know why that's happening. Maybe we'll find out later. Oh, I bet you I know why it's happening. So this is, oh, wait. Oh, right, okay. So I wonder, okay, so we're going to go back, and this is where you're going to have to start, dealing with the fact your render times are going to be higher. And we're going to go in here and finally, bring it down to what I was working with, which is, significantly smaller. Go back in here and see what we're looking at. No. And then I'm going to take this object and subdivide it. See if this can get us more of what we're looking for. It doesn't seem to be doing anything. Nope. Interesting. Very weird. I don't think there's anything that I'm completely missing. That all looks right. Let's just copy this guy. It's a nice thing about having two things with Houdini open. Yeah, let's just, side by side. What is going wrong here? Nothing. They look identical. Nothing different at all. Well, let's plug in this guy into here. Yeah, okay. Interesting. So this object, for some reason, is, generating less particles than my can was. So I'm going to go in here and just steal this guy, bring it over and see if we can, replicate what I was getting. Wonderful. We get an error. Yep, because it can't find this guy. And not to worry. It's because we're just sitting in a dangerous area here. We're going to go in, we're going to take that can. Great. Okay, interesting. So actually look, let's leave that there. Okay, so that explains it. That's a good thing to know. This tube that I made just arbitrarily compared to my other can that I was using in my other scene is way smaller. So I'm gonna bring that guy up actually in radius by so it's a 4 times bigger. 3.5. Okay. 0.25. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to keep the subdivisions and everything, but that's a good thing to know that if you're you kind of build it up as a system, and then you add a new object in that's way smaller, you're going to run into these issues where it's not generating as many particles to feed the whole system. So I'm going to send this guy over and see what we're getting now. Great. So that's way closer. That's what we're needing. Awesome. And we can look at this guy as well. Yep. So there's more in this one, a little bit less in this one. And these settings are all the same. Great. So that's a big thing there. I'm actually going to bring that back in and just use this as our transform here. Rotator. Swap that guy out. And then you see this green icon, which means, I've animated something in here, and we're just animating rotation. So you can see how it's spaced out. So up until frame 15, not rotating at all. I'm going to turn off the brain. See, so let's go in here. Oh, another big thing is I want this at full scale. Great. So you can see nothing, and then from frame 15 to 28, which was just what looked good to me speed wise, is just a simple 180, 360 actually. So a full spin does it completely all the way around, and that's that part. That's all you got to do is just animate it. And now this is working based off this. So I came up with frame 15 because I needed to, by frame 5, make all of the condensation droplets I wanted to, and then have 10 frames for them to sort of, get a little bit of that gravity flowing down and figure themselves out and kind of join up with their other buddies that they're near. And then once they were looking nice and, had been affected by some of this gravity a little bit, then I spun them. But they're not making any more after frame 5. So I get them up to frame 5, they make a bunch, and then, let them sort of have some dynamic placement and motion based off, gravity, and then spin them for roughly 13 frames, about half a second, and that should be good. Great. So I'm going to put this, view back to our can. And actually, sometimes that does it. I don't think that I need any subdivisions here. Oh, it does. Okay, so that does affect it. Oh, not that weird. It affects the placement of it. What if I completely just get rid of this and I bring these back down just, 2. Okay, so it doesn't seem to, be making any less. It's just kind of rearranging where it places them. So I'm just going to get rid of that then. No need for it. Great. So we've made particles, and we can look at them here. So we've made our particles set up, right, so that there's a bunch, and then even more that they can sort of be emitted from. And then we know that we're spinning on frame. Oh, interesting. Why is there a small can inside of a huge can? That seems weird. Ah, if I turn this guy back on, maybe it will think about itself. Yep, okay. So, you can already see it's doing what we want. So we know that we're starting our turn at frame 15. So I'm just going to double check my last scene just to make sure I'm not misleading anybody. So let's go to gravity first. So just also going to crank this way down 60. So you can see the gravity, what's happening here is, so frame 5, we're at this super low value, which I just, I got by just trial and error of like enough that it kind of started to bring the droplets down, but not enough that they were all kind of uniformly, because that's the only issue I have with the setup, and something I'm going to be playing with is this gravity driving it as just a mass brute, everybody go down, is that every droplet, no matter size, moves down the can. And the issue with that is that really, in reality, little tiny droplets, they're not going to move. And these bigger ones, they kind of have big mass to them, they're gonna slowly kind of go down, and as they go down and they pick up wetter spots, they're going to go faster. So this might be something that will be better driven as a force with maybe a noise or something, and as well as taking into account the P scale. Now I'm just talking about random stuff. Just the size of each droplet might be a better thing to sort of drive this by than just a brute force. Everybody go down, everybody go up, everybody do whatever this force direction is. So from 5 to 8, we go up, double the amount. And we're still not even spinning yet. That's just, they're all made here. And while they're being made, I didn't really want that much. And then by 8, I want them to start going down a little bit more. And then from 8 to 1 after it starts spinning, we're going back and we're kind of easing off. So it's a big amount so that you start it, as they're starting, they're going down, and then I'm pulling it back so that the newer emitted particles in that area are not being pulled down as much, so you sort of get a bigger teardrop shape by doing this. And then from 16 to 19, this is where it goes all the way up to the default pretty much, and that's what I left it at. I didn't actually go full 9 because it was too much, and it didn't look as correct, and so I went closer to their default that they set up. And then so those are sort of the frames that you can see. So just a little bit up here, which is a little weird just because that's more shaping and art directing it. And then this is the big move. You just introduce more gravity, and the other guy that's doing that is here. So in the same spot. So 16, pretty close to the default. Max distance, I added a little bit to get it kind of pushed more away from being dead in the middle to being more sort of on being pushed away and bulbing up more. So that's what this was doing. The multiplier put back to 6. The shape is still the same. And by the time you get here, strength has been 1/6 the amount. The max distance is 10. So it can go as far away from this can as it wants as it spins and as it gets more gravity. So those are the frames that do that. So we're going to go back into this fake scene, and we're going to turn off our brain. We're going to go 5, and you can kind of see it's already starting to roughly take shape. I'm going to go -0.25, and that's not what we want. We want -0.25. I think, if I can even remember what I just looked at. Yeah, that's what we want. And then we're gonna, alt-click on this force attribute. Gonna go up 5 to, where was that? I can't even remember what I just looked at. 5, 8. I mean, these are all, mess with them, but these are just, going to try to do it close. Double it. Alt click again to, keyframe it. And then, where did our last one go? 16. So we let it go all the way, even as it's spinning, back down to this really tiny number. And it's spinning until frame from 15 to 28, but you can see in here I'm turning it up pretty fast. Like, it only gets a little amount of time to not be at full gravity, and that's just so that I was doing this way at the end, and you get this weird like hanging on that these droplets do when they don't fully spin out, and they just kind of hover, and then you get this like weird just like shoo, and they just kind of all drop down. So this is better. So they kind of all just let go right away. So I put that up to 19 and put this at negative 4.5, close to the value that their default was at. And then this guy, just going to frame 16 right after it starts spinning, and bring this up. So it's we're giving it 4 times the distance that it originally was doing. I'm just going to put this down. Just going to leave it, I guess, at that. And then 19. Bring this guy way down. So this is also, do it before instead of all the way through, so that they can right away start letting go. Crank that all the way up to 10. Cool. So those are the 2 parts that you have to animate in here. Everybody in there is looking fine. And now we're going to go back out. So we're going to go into this section. And there's another key thing in here that I didn't mention before. There's more than just checking that button. And I don't know if this part's right, and it's having to think about it a bunch. And so this is the setup that I had to do that intersection, and it's really easy, just a little bit of fine tuning. In here, so that's checked on, and this influence scale and voxel scale were other things that I messed with and I forgot to mention. So these are a key part to making the droplets not exactly merge with each other in the typical fashion that you see a lot of the meshers do, where you get these like spidery, like bulby shapes that look more like metaballs than little droplets. And so these were actually like a aha moment for me. So you can see by default we're at an influence scale of 3 and a voxel scale of 0.75. So we just bring that down and cut this in half, and that really does a lot. Along with this is a key part to the look, and this is a key part to just the mesh in general. And so after this, I'm just going to slide these guys off to the side. What we're going to want to do is just bring in an object merge, and we're going to take this from our can, and we're going to go can out, and now we're bringing our can back in, and then we're going to do a merge node, and nope, not that, a merge node, and we're going to pipe that in, and then we're going to copy this and duplicate it, and we're going to go up, and we're going to get the floor, and then we're going to get the floor out, and this is kind of what we're going to be doing our masking with. And then we're going to do a from, not a convert. And it's all the way at the bottom. And this is just standard. This is how you do it. There's no other way to do it. This is just everyone will tell you this is how you do it. This is mad because there are none. So don't worry about that. There just isn't anything there, and that's what it's getting upset about. This is all, voxel size was the only thing I really messed with here. And I went high with it, 0.001. And that is the same for both. 0.001. So, a lot more dense. And this is going to add a lot of time because these take a while to make and to mesh and to do the intersection geometry, or the intersection solve for the can with the droplets. And so, yeah, you can see right here, it's just 74. This is a big hit. This is why I leave this to the meshing. You can do all your look dev without this, just knowing that at the end when you're, like me personally, when you're going out to Alembic like I did into Cinema 4D, you just know this is just a step you're going to want at the end. So actually, I'm just going to walk through here. So, and there's comments in the hip file in case you're confused. Actually, I should have added that. I guess that's a little Easter egg of just this video is knowing about those things, because I only marked that because I completely forgot. Yeah, so in here, you're making this can a VDB. And then the first thing you're going to do is you're going to erode. And that's because this is how you get that slight intersection. Let's see if I can turn the brain on. Or simulate. What is this called? It's not the brain. Yeah, simulation brain. Let's go back. Not look at that. Let's look at this guy. Cool. Let's make some. Because this is real-time speed. This is what it took for me to get this going. So it's you're already looking at, there's a bunch. We're on frame 3 already, and that's pretty crazy fast for all the stuff that it's doing. And so once I get a few more, I'm going to stop at frame 5, and this is as many as you're going to get. So it's kind of insane that it just did that. Like, even when I'm cloning spheres on top of a object, it gets bogged down sometimes. And this is, a bunch of dynamic, particle, fluid. I mean, all those words, when you think about them in simulation, mean heavy simulation time, but it does it really well. Cool. So if at any point this would like to stop, great. So yeah, I mean, that's what it's starting to look like. So now we can go in here and start looking at what this is doing. So yeah, so great. This is our mesh just out of the surface fluid. And this is what I was talking about. So it's making both sides. It's not stopping as soon as the collision happens. And if you take this and put it on a bottle, you're going to see this inside through it, and it's going to look really bad and not right. And everyone's going to be like, why in the world does your condensation look like that, and why does it intersect? And so my solution to that is just do sort of like a bool, but with volumes. And so you convert this guy right over, and it's a little bigger, and that's fine. I wasn't too worried. I wasn't too attached to the shapes exactly, but I mean, I guess if you are, you're gonna have to really kind of fine tune this volume stuff. And then you're taking this object, your can, you're bringing it in to the same level of voxel size that you're doing this one, because when you get down here to the combine, you're going to want those to be the same, or it starts to do extra math in there to do that for you. And then that's the amount you're eroding. That was it. So you're up here just a little bit. And this is because you still need some intersection. You still need them to go a little bit inside the glass, or else you can kind of see that they're hovering, and you don't want that at all. Then you smooth it. And that really doesn't affect how much in or out it is. It just kind of affects stuff up here. So you can see that you're like super crisp, and then this sort of stuff, you're just kind of smoothing it so it's not like looks like it's notched out. It's just smooth over it. And then this is the main effect that you're going for, and you can see it, right inside here. So you're getting these flat surfaces, and this is what you want. This is why you're doing this. So when you're looking at this bottle from the side, you don't see the intersections, you just see this flat surface. Then you're going to go and you're smooth that so that it's, less on these edges, so like super cut out. And this is going to give you good caustics. So when you shine, in your renderer of choice, you shine a super bright light, this little tiny edge is going to bend light better than a blobby sphere that you had, up here. It's going to bend light better than that being a harsh edge with no bend to it, versus that. And then just, convert. And, as far as polygons go, I mean, you're looking at like this versus this. So yeah, your surface fluid is, it's nice and optimized, and you can do that down here. I just prefer to kind of go high poly if I'm going to do condensation, because I want this to be smooth and I want it not to look faceted. So I'm okay with taking that hit in polygon count. And we can actually look at what we're going down here too. So we're sitting at 3 million polygons for all this condensation, which I mean really isn't that bad. I mean it's high, it really is. It could be optimized, but it's really not that bad when you're going up here and you're looking at 1 poly because it's polygon soup. That's not what I want. Let's make a second one. That's also probably not a very good idea. And that might crash the whole system. Yep. Do not copy a surface fluid. It's okay. There it is. Let's go back up here. Take a look at that. Cool. Let's just go source polygons. Take a look at that. So you're looking at 1 million here. So you're kind of introducing 3 times the amount of polygons, but for all intents and purposes, I think you're doing it for a really justified reason. You're gonna have to do this intersection if you want to ever use this with glass. So I don't think it's that big of a hit. And you can obviously go down here and you can look at your convert and go inside here and mess with the adaptivity. So if you're used to R20, same sort of thing. So just a hair of that, and you can get back a bunch. And yeah, we're right back down to 1 million. So that's but you're retaining all this inside stuff, and you get really gross, triangles and all that nasty stuff. So that's why I don't like doing it. But if you need to, if you have a huge car hood or something that you're putting all this on, then yeah, go for it. But I tend to not, just to avoid those faceting issues. And that's it. I mean, other than doing the rest of the sim, I did mine for 60 frames, and it definitely starts bogging down up here for takes 2 minutes a frame, but it's really fast. I mean, it's great. I'm really excited with it. I'm excited to mess with a lot more options that I can think of for how to maybe art direct some and then convert them into this Autodop network, and kind of place and scatter points inside them, and then have a few key guys that go down based on a noise pattern, and then have, like I was saying, a noise a weight pattern, sort of bringing the bigger ones down, and maybe that's what drives them. So there's a lot that can be built inside of just this system, and it's super easy. There's a few key things in here that you have to sort of mess with, and then you can really get up and running. And like I said, 6 hours, not knowing at all much about pop fluids, and I was able to get that. So I mean, really would love to see other people sort of dive into this, other people that are way smarter than me and, kind of know what they're doing with pop fluids and stuff. So, yeah, a few people have been asking for how I set this up, and I figured this would be a good, first tutorial. So let me know if there's any other things on my Vimeo um, that you guys want to see sort of this video style on. I know a lot of people have been asking about this project as long as this. I did a mini breakdown, but a lot of people are still like, I don't understand what you're doing, which makes sense. I kind of sped it up and flew through the process on that. Some of this stuff people have been asking, but I really don't feel like I'm in the space to talk about that because this is just a Ian Farnsworth hip file that I sort of messed with, so I don't feel like it's my space to really explain it because it's his system that he built. Some people have been asking about the shrink wrap that was, fully built by me, so I could definitely go through that. I don't think it was built by me properly or in, the best way, but it got what I was looking for done. And yeah, so might do more of these if there's a demand. Cool. So thank you for watching. Hope this helped. Also, if you're more of a veteran Houdini user and you see anything like majorly wrong in this video, please let me know. The last thing I want to do is spread misinformation about things that I'm kind of just tinkering with. That's my number one fear with recording tutorials. So if you see anything in here, just, ping me, DM me, Instagram message me, message me on here, email me. My email is just IsaacTaracks.com. Yeah, and just let me know, and I'll try to, flag it under the video. Like, please don't do this. I was leading you astray. So yeah, awesome. You can download this can and everything, this exact file with all the comments inside it, from the link posted in the description of this Vimeo, which I will I'll leave a link to this on this video. You can also check out my work at Taracks.com, and I have some of my projects up here, a lot of my motion experiments, which I've been doing a lot more of Houdini in here, and you can find it directly as well. The direct download is on my website, Freebies, along with some other cool projects that you can dig through. That if you want these videos, they're not all Houdini. There's After Effects, Cinema. Yeah, just let me know. And thanks for watching.